in line with the vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat or self-reliant India, so as we can have a revival of the nation's economy in the post-COVID environment. But before all that, we would like to get a perspective on the maritime domain. India, as you all know, is essentially a maritime nation with a natural outflow towards the seas. And the best way to understand the maritime perspective is to put the map of India and the surrounding Indian Ocean upside down. When you do that, you quickly lose your continental focus and you realize that we in India need to look outwards towards the seas which surround us on all three sides. And it also brings home the fact that we are heavily dependent on the oceans and the seas for our external trade, for our resources, for our economic well being and prosperity, and for our maritime security. As a maritime nation, India sits astride busy sea lines of communication which transit across the Indian Ocean, over which, as you know, nearly 120,000 ships transit every year, carrying 66% of the world's oil, 50% of the world's container traffic, and 33% of the world's cargo traffic. Now, what I would like to highlight here is the issue that in the past few years, under the leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister, there have been, can you see me on the screen?
Yeah, yeah.
That in the past few years,
Yes, sir, we
under
can
the
see you.
leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister, we have had a series of initiatives for sustainable development in the maritime domain, along with the quest to harness the blue economy. Now, currently, we are actually fighting a war. And since the Second World War, the coronavirus or the COVID disaster is perhaps the biggest disaster which has seen, which has impacted every aspect of human life. And it has expanded to not just being a health or a medical disaster, it is also an economic crisis, as well as a humanitarian, as well as a social crisis. What I would like to now highlight is how we need to develop certain sectors in the maritime domain to harness our blue economy in accordance with the vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat so that we can revive India's economy in the post COVID environment. First, the port and harbors, the development area. We have, India has 12 major ports and over 200 non major ports. And the current port handling capacity of 1,500 million metric tons per annum is likely to increase to 2,500 million metric tons per annum over the next 10 years. We have also the government's plan, which is for the Sagarmala project, which is a port led development initiative based on four pillars of port modernization, connectivity, port led industrialization, and the coastal community development. Sagarmala actually envisages investment of over 60 to 70 billion US dollars, and the aim is to develop transshipment hubs as well as to develop infrastructure. Now, this is going to give a major boost to India's economy because not only on the development of the port infrastructure, because of the employment opportunities which would be generated in the entire maritime sector as such. We then have the opportunity through the Sagarmala project for connectivity of our major ports to the hinterland through the connectivity by the intermodal, multimodal road and rail connectivity, as well as development of our inland waterways. As you're aware, India has about 14,500 kilometers of navigable inland waterways, and of these, In the first phase, the government is developing about 6,000 kilometers as five major national waterways. And these would ensure that currently 94% of freight in India is moved or handled by road or rail. The development of our coastal shipping as well as inland waterways would ensure increased transportation of this freight over water, which is cheaper, safer, as well as cleaner. And this again will open up a host of opportunities for the sustainable development in the maritime domain. Firstly, we must also understand that oceans are central to life on Earth. They are rich in oil and mineral resources. They are the suppliers of oxygen. They are the absorbers of carbon dioxide and a virtual heat sink, which is rich in biodiversity and has emerged as the global economic highways for transportation of seaborne trade. With depletion of resources on land, humankind has turned towards the seas for resources. And there is a misperception that the oceans are an unending resource base and an infinite sink. Nothing could be further away from reality. And over the past few decades, we have witnessed indiscriminate pollution of the ocean and contamination of the natural marine habitat, resulting in a detrimental impact of climate change on the oceans. Studies have indicated that nearly 80% of all pollutants in the oceans emanate from land. And if the current rate of pollution continues, in a few decades from now, we will have more plastic in the ocean than fish. So the blue economy has emerged as a new paradigm. And I would like to define the harnessing of the blue economy as the development of all our maritime interests by optimal utilization of resources with minimum impact on the environment to ensure sustainable development of the oceans. As we mentioned that India is heavily dependent on the oceans and the seas. We have a long coastline of 7,516 kilometers. We have an exclusive economic zone of over 2 million square kilometers. We have over 1,300 islands and islets as part of the Andaman and Nicobar group in the Bay of Bengal and the Lakshadweep group in the Arabian Sea and islands of the west and east coast of India. We also need to look at our shipping sector because, as you all know, 90% or 95% of India's trade by volume and 77% by value transits by sea. And our shipping industry comprises about 1,430 ships which fly the Indian flag. And recently, the government has given a boost for registration of larger number of ships because while 90% of our trade transits by sea, only 7% is carried on Indian flagships. So there is a need to correct this imbalance between the flag and trade. And this is another sector which we need to revive in the coming years to revive our economy. The next area is our vibrant shipbuilding community. India has over 27 shipyards, but our shipbuilding capability is there, but our percentages with regard to the world shipbuilding is a meager 0.15%. And the government has given incentives to accord the infrastructure status to shipbuilding and also to permit 100% foreign direct investment into shipbuilding. We would therefore need to actually, one of the action plan would be to prepare a 30-year shipbuilding plan for the country where we look into our capabilities and requirements and build ships across the various tonnage that are required. And these could be the large container vessels, the LNG carriers, the oil tankers, because as you know, 80% of our oil requirement, 40% of our gas requirements are imported. And right now, these are transited on board not Indian ships, largely on ships of other flags. And we pay huge amounts of money in terms of freight, over 50 billion US dollars every year. Therefore, there is a need that ships of the future should be built in India as part of our initiative of Atmanirbhar Bharat. And this would ensure that the ships of the future are also built in accordance with the Energy Efficiency Design Index, which has been approved by the IMO. And these will be propelled on environmentally friendly fuel in accordance with the norms of the blue economy. An area I would like to specifically mention is that of warship building in India. Soon after independence, the Indian Navy made its first prospective plan in 1948. Yes, just 1 year after independence, where nascent steps were taken towards indigenous shipbuilding. We inducted naval architects into the Navy in 1955, and we built our naval patrol vessel INS Ajay in 1961 at the Garden Reach shipyard in Kolkata. We set up a naval design directorate in 1964. So for now, over 50 years, our naval designers have been designing and our indigenous shipyards have been building ships for the Indian Navy, resulting in our transformation from a buyer's Navy to a builder's Navy. Today, it's a matter of great pride that nearly 50 ships and submarines are under construction in Indian shipyards, both public and private. And these range, as you know, from aircraft carrier to frigates, destroyers, and submarines. I consider that this is one of the finest examples of Atmanirbharta and Swadeshikaran, or self-reliance and indigenization. It should be our endeavor so that we can progressively increase the indigenous content so that future warships and submarines are 100% made in India. And this would be a great boost to our economy and also make us self reliant and also increase the industrialization process because all our experience in warship building can also be transferred to the commercial shipbuilding sector. The next area is that we have a vibrant fishing industry. We have over 250,000 fishing boats, over 4 million active fishermen, 14 million people who are part of the fishing community, and our annual production, which is in the region of 11.5 million metric tons, makes us among the second largest fishing nation in the world. However, this is only scratching the surface because 90% or more of fishing in Indian waters is restricted to our coastal areas, whereas we have the entire 200 nautical miles of the exclusive economic zone to be exploited. The government has promulgated the 2017 National Fishing Policy with a focus on deep sea fishing as well as sustainable fishing. And this would provide great opportunity for development of the entire fishing sector to construction of deep sea fishing trawlers, which again can be constructed within the country in our boat yards and shipyards. We can have the development of the coastal community of fishermen. We can set up the entire fishing industry for packaging and exports. And this would not only provide employment in the fishing sector, but also see that this entire fishing sector develops from building of the fishing trawlers to the actual fish processing and the exports of fish. India has about over 1,300 islands and islets, and the government has prepared island development policy with a focus on security, looking into aspects of sustainable economy, the environment preservation, and social and cultural sustenance. The aim in all this is to have actually greenfield infrastructure projects with minimal carbon footprint and a focus on controlled ecotourism. This would certainly open up a host of opportunities for development of the entire marine tourism sector and the cruise tourism sector. The development of infrastructure in our islands, particularly the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, would also provide the connectivity between the islands and the entire east coast of India with all our literal neighbors in the Bay of Bengal, which, as you know, is one of the largest bay in the world. And we have 7 countries located on the rim of the bay, and we could look into issues related to not just connectivity, but also for harnessing the blue economy with our literal neighbors. The other areas which include or can be looked at for development is the offshore oil and gas sector, both on the west and east coast of India. As you're aware, our exclusive economic zone has the potential for oil and gas exploration, and some is already being done, but there is plenty of scope for further enhancement. For deep seabed mining in the central Indian Ocean, where India has been allocated a large area way back in 1987, and also the pioneer status, this is another area which can grow. Another area is the issue related to a niche sector, which is that of renewable sources of ocean energy. When we look at the renewable sources of ocean energy, we look at the offshore wind energy, the tidal energy, and the wave energy, and also ocean thermal energy conversion. Actually, the waters of the Andaman Nicobar Islands are quite conducive for harnessing the ocean thermal energy conversion because the temperature on the surface of the water is about 24, 25 degrees, and the temperature at the depth of about 1,000 meters is 4 to 5 degrees. So, this temperature differential can be used because when water is pumped out from these depths, it gives us this temperature differential of 20 degrees, which can be used to run turbines and generate power. We can also use the oxygen that is provided from these depths of the water that is there for shrimp farming and can be used for the fish farming as well. So we can see that we have a host of opportunities, actually an ocean of opportunities for harnessing the blue economy, as it were. As you're all aware, the United Nations has promulgated a document transforming our world 2030 agenda and the sustainable development goals, in which the sustainable development goal 14 looks into conservation of ocean, seas, and resources. India is not only looking at the economic development of all our maritime interests, but we are committed to sustainable development as well. And as you're all aware, we have made our voluntary review report to the United Nations High Level Political Forum in July 2017. So we are committed for sustainable development. We are committed to ensure that this ocean of opportunities is utilized for harnessing the blue economy. The challenge, however, is to ensure that this is achieved by optimal utilization of resources with minimal impact on the environment to ensure sustainable development of the oceans. The Indian Ocean is the third largest water body, spanning an area of 68.5 million square kilometers, and countries on the rim of the Indian Ocean are home to nearly 1/3 of humanity. Another unique aspect of the Indian Ocean is that 80% of the oil and trade that emanates in the Indian Ocean region is extra regional in nature. This implies that if there is any impediment to the free flow of oil or trade, it would have a detrimental impact not just on the economies of the region, but the global economy as well. This is where we need to pause and think of the vision of our Honorable Prime Minister for the Indian Ocean, which has been promulgated as Sagar, which means the ocean, and the acronym stands for security and growth for all in the region. We therefore see that we have a host of opportunities for revival of our economy by harnessing the blue economy and development of all our maritime interests. In conclusion, I would like to highlight five major takeaways as the way ahead. As I mentioned, the United Nations document Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda, and the Sustainable Development Goal 14 provide the template for conservation of ocean, seas, and resources. India now needs to draw up a perspective plan for sustainable development in different avenues of our entire maritime sector. As a maritime nation, we have tremendous potential for harnessing the blue economy and for indeed revival of our economy in the post COVID scenario. What we need to do is to draw up a comprehensive national maritime policy for harnessing our blue economy and sustainable development of the oceans. The third recommendation would be that there is a need for an apex level organization to coordinate and integrate the large number of agencies and departments which operate in the maritime domain so that we can actually work towards the economic development of all our maritime interests in a manner which can be coordinated well, and also we can monitor the initiatives taken for harnessing the blue economy. In order to fully implement the Honorable Prime Minister's vision of Sagar, or security and growth for all in the region, we need to draw up a comprehensive maritime cooperation roadmap with other littoral neighbors and countries of the Indian Ocean region to harness the blue economy and also use these measures to revive our economy by this maritime cooperation. Finally, the Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, has launched a dynamic initiative of Swachh Bharat, or Clean India. We need to extend this initiative to Swachh Sagar, or clean and healthy oceans for the future generations. The seas around us are gaining newfound importance as each day goes by, and I have no doubt that the current century is the century of the seas. Therefore, we need to work towards the economic development of all our maritime interests, harness the blue economy, which will lead to the revival of our economy using the vision of the Honorable Prime Minister of India of Atmanirbhar Bharat, or self-reliant India, which will ensure that India once again turns towards the seas and emerges as a resurgent maritime nation in the 21st century. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.